Hey everyone, welcome back to TCO Studios. It's time for another edition of the Pick Six. I'm your host, Mike Wobschall from the Vikings Entertainment Network. Thank you for submitting your questions. Now, let's answer them. The first one comes from Jeff. What concerns or questions did you have after 4 games, and what did you see this week against the Giants to affirm or address those concerns? Well, Jeff, I felt really good about the Vikings offense in the first 3 games of the season, particularly the way we were running the ball. Then in Chicago, we weren't able to run the ball very well. So I was hopeful the Vikings wouldn't shy away from using Dalvin Cook against the Giants. And, well, they didn't do that. The Vikings were not shy about using Dalvin. They used him early and often. Dalvin had over 200 yards from scrimmage. He became the first Vikings player with more than 120 rushing yards and more than 80 receiving yards in the same game. So good job by Kevin Stefanski, the offensive line, and Dalvin Cook against the Giants. Question number 2 comes from John in Lone Pine, California. Great game for both the offense and defense. Great to see the run and pass complement each other. What are your thoughts overall on the game? Well, John, I think you're right. The Vikings played great complementary football, both offense and defense, but I thought special teams was also very good. This was a get-right game for the Vikings offense. They should feel very confident heading to a home game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I also thought the Vikings defense continued to be dominant. They were dominant in the first quarter of the season through the first 4 games, and they were dominant against the Giants last Sunday. Next question comes from Steve. It seems like we are really getting our screen game together with Cook and the tight ends. Is this something the coaches are putting more emphasis on? Yeah, I think it's something the Vikings worked on quite a bit this offseason and this training camp. And this is one of the great things about Dalvin Cook. He is our workhorse. He's a guy who can carry the ball 20 times a game, but he's a true dual threat at the running back position. He can catch the ball as well. In fact, he has over 20 receptions on the season, and he had 6 catches against the Giants. Next question comes from Curtis in Pennsylvania. The offense did great against the Giants, but how come we are not targeting the tight ends? Well, right now, through 5 games, the main contribution for the Vikings tight end group has been as blockers, both in pass protection, but most notably as run blockers. Kyle Rudolph has done a great job of leading this group in that area. They've been excellent in pass protection and run blocking. But I promise you, this is a week-to-week league, so I promise you, the tight ends are going to be asked to contribute as pass catchers at some point in the season, and I think they're going to be up for that challenge too. And the next question comes from Sherry in Brooklyn Park. Who were the unsung heroes of the game in New York? Well, let's start with an offensive lineman. Brian O'Neill off to a fantastic start this season and played well against the Giants. That guy on defense, Mike Hughes. He's come back from his injury, and he looks better than ever. He had a few pass breakups against the Giants and almost had an interception in the second half. He's got sticky coverage, and I think he's going to have an interception in the coming weeks. Great to have Mike Hughes back, especially with Mackenzie Alexander missing in last week's game. It's always good to have depth at corner. And finally, how about that guy, Dan Bailey? 4 for 4 on field goals, including 2 in that tricky 40 to 49-yard range. He also made both of his extra points. He had touchbacks on kickoffs. Man, Dan Bailey is steady, and I really like that. The final question comes from Gerald. We are improving, and that is the name of the game. I want to see fewer penalties. What improvement would you like to see? I agree with you, Gerald. Fewer penalties, always good. Penalties can be drive killers. You know what else is a drive killer? Turnovers. Dalvin had one. Look at that. Good play by the defender. A fumble right near the goal line. The Giants recovered. That wasn't very good. So let's get rid of penalties and turnovers. And then finally, another thing to eliminate, negative yardage plays. Dalvin getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. Now, he made something out of that run, but the Giants had close to 10 tackles for loss in our game against them last week. Tackles for loss on offense also can be drive stoppers. So let's eliminate tackles for loss, penalties, and turnovers. Then our offense will really be humming. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Pick Six. Next week, it's another episode of the Vikings Voyage. 2 weeks from now, it's another episode of the Pick Six. So use the email address at the bottom of the screen. Send us your thoughts, questions, and opinions, and maybe we'll see you in the next edition of the Pick Six.